Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. All right, let's do one more football topic before we get to basketball. And it is the transfer portal. And I'll just say this really quick, is that last spring, if you remember, about April or May, I said that the transfer portal is now officially a topic. If you love college sports and you listen to Sports Talk Radio, Sirius XM, the Aaron Torres Podcast, whatever, the transfer portal is officially a topic in a way that it wasn't even 2 or 3 years ago. And the reason why is very simple. This is a game-changing thing in both college football and college basketball. You no longer have to wait on freshmen. You no longer have to wait on the unknown. You can go out, fill a hole. It is college football free agency and find impact players right away. I think we have already seen the impact of the one-time transfer rule before it was even officially implemented this year. When you look across college football, and Kenneth Walker at Michigan State is a Heisman Trophy candidate. He obviously came from Wake Forest. Jamison Williams is probably going to be a first-round pick from Alabama. He came from Ohio State. So we are already seeing the impact, and now that the season is over, the floodgates are open, and the transfers are pouring in. No shortage of guys enter the transfer portal throughout the week, guys enter the transfer portal throughout the day on Monday. And so what I want to do is I want to hit on the single biggest guy that hit the transfer portal on Monday, and that is, of course, Spencer Rattler, the former quarterback at Oklahoma. Now, this wasn't surprising. It wasn't unexpected. In some ways, I thought the Lincoln Riley move may keep him at Oklahoma a little while longer. I thought it might make sense for him to stay, see who the new head coach is. See, frankly, if Caleb Williams follows Lincoln Riley to USC, and if he does, maybe it made sense for Spencer Rattler to consider staying at Oklahoma. But instead, he has decided to enter the portal. He will look for a new school, and I think he is going to be the single most high-profile player that hits the transfer portal all offseason. Now, I do think it's worth noting with Spencer Rattler one thing. For all the criticism that he took, and I should mention, I think everybody knows the background, but number one high school quarterback in America, 2019 sat behind Jalen Hurts, last year became the full-time starter. And what I was going to say is, for all the criticism of Spencer Rattler, I think it's easy to forget one thing. He was actually pretty good last year as a full-time starter at Oklahoma during the 2020 COVID season. Now, he wasn't great, lost 2 of his first 3 games, but by the end of the season, Oklahoma won the Big 12 championship, Oklahoma went to the Cotton Bowl, and Spencer Rattler was a big reason why. 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions last season, threw for over 3,000 yards, 68% completion percentage. That sounds like a pretty good quarterback for all of the scorn that he has taken. And this year, despite losing the job to Caleb Williams, and it was, of course, the right decision, I'm not saying it wasn't, he completed 75% of his passes this year for 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns. So we're talking about Spencer Rattler as if like he's this lost cause. And I think he could be really good. I just think for whatever reason it did not work out at Oklahoma. And never forget, Oklahoma had the number one quarterback in America sitting behind him, where if he was at literally any other school, he probably would have gotten more of an opportunity to continue to play at Oklahoma and maybe play through his problems. I also do understand that we can't sugarcoat it either. You know, this was a guy that did struggle. Oklahoma's offense did not look the same. I think it's fair to say that if you can't succeed under Lincoln Riley, who can he succeed under? But again, I think the stats were a little bit misleading in terms of, he won essentially every game that he started as quarterback at Oklahoma this season, as they started out whatever they did, 9-0 to start the season. But I just bring this all up to say I think some of the stuff that we say about him is a little bit unfair. I do understand there's also the off-the-field stuff. Netflix did a documentary called QB1. He was part of it. He did not always come off looking well. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to say it's perfect. But he is the biggest name player in the transfer portal, and I think it's going to be really interesting to monitor this thing going forward. Now, in terms of where he's going to go next, I think there's a few schools to consider. And again, this is what we do now in the new world of transfer portal stuff. When Kofi Cockburn entered the transfer portal, I talk Kofi Cockburn. When Marcus Carr entered the transfer portal in basketball, I talk Marcus Carr, Walker Kessler, Kellen Grady, whatever. And I'm going to do the same here with Spencer Rattler. And over the last few weeks, knowing that Spencer Rattler was going to enter the portal, I went ahead and made a few phone calls, tried to figure out what are some realistic schools, which aren't. And what I would say is this, is there are a couple schools that immediately come to mind when it comes to Spencer Rattler. The first one is actually Arizona State. And for people who don't know, Spencer Rattler is from the Phoenix area. He is from Phoenix exactly area, obviously. And for people who don't know the geography, Arizona State is in Tempe, which is right next to Phoenix. So he's from the area. He could go home. And there's a few interesting developments at Arizona State. First of all, Herm Edwards is going to be back in 2022. Now, I never really understood why people were so convinced that he wasn't returning. For people who don't know the relationship there, he and the AD are basically tied at the hip, where if the AD fired Herm Edwards for these NCAA rules violations, he would basically be admitting that it was an incompetent hire and that he probably should lose his job as well. So I'm not totally surprised that Herm Edwards is back, but obviously there are NCAA rules violations. But Spencer Rattler, who's only going to be there hopefully for 1 year, I don't think he cares about that. I think it's a pretty good landing spot. This is an Arizona State team that is good but not great. They probably are coming into the year. There was a lot of hype. I didn't really buy the hype, in large part because I didn't really love the quarterback, Jaden Daniels. And it's no disrespect to that kid, but Arizona State goes 8-4. This despite having the 97th ranked passing attack in college football. This despite their fact that their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, completed just 66% of his passes, 10 touchdowns in 12 games. And whether he decides to stay himself, whether he decides to transfer, I don't think he would try to go pro. He does have 1 year left, but I think Arizona State, they can compete for Pac-12 titles in this Pac-12. Maybe not with Lincoln Riley anymore, but it kind of makes sense for Arizona State to pursue this kid. Now, for Spencer Rattler's perspective, I think it's the best fit. Again, winning culture, former NFL head coach, a system that's kind of a pro-style-ish system. Obviously, a great running back in Rachaad White, who is projected. Rachaad White is a senior. I take that back. So he probably will not be back next year. But I just bring it up to say, NFL style, defense, ground game, run attack. You don't have to do too much. Just come in and do what you do. I think he could have success there, and he's going home. He'd be, kind of in his home base. Obviously, it would be interesting. Lincoln Riley, of course, he would be facing at some point next year with Arizona State and USC being in the same division. But I think that's the logical first landing spot. The second one, I think, is super obvious as well. It's Ole Miss. Because Ole Miss has the ultimate QB whisperer outside of Lincoln Riley, maybe Ryan Day, and that's our buddy Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin is a rock star. Lane Kiffin is a stud. And I don't think we give Lane Kiffin enough credit for how good he's been. He went to Alabama, and in 4 different seasons at Alabama, I believe 4 different starting quarterbacks made the playoff in all 4 seasons. That shows you how good Lane Kiffin was as Alabama's offensive coordinator. Won a national championship with Jacob Coker, won the SEC, made the playoff with Blake Sims. He is a QB whisperer. Obviously, Matt Corral was there the last few years. Matt Corral is going pro after this season. He participated in Senior Day. He is gone. And so I just bring it up to just say, this makes a lot of sense for me in terms of why Spencer Rattler would be interested in going to Ole Miss and playing with Lane Kiffin. What is also interesting, I would say, I think you have to look at it from Lane Kiffin's perspective as well. I think any kid who enters the portal, is going to want to play for Lane Kiffin. And so if Lane Kiffin does not believe, or if he already knows that Spencer Rattler, he does not believe is the best quarterback that will be in the portal this year, I think that he can go ahead and be patient in terms of who he actually pursues as his next quarterback for next season. Again, Matt Corral's gone. There's an obvious opening. And I think Lane Kiffin, if he gets a speculation that somebody else that he's more interested could be leaving, remember, Ohio State had 4 really good quarterbacks this year. One of them, Jack Miller, has already entered the portal. Beyond that, Quinn Ewers could enter the portal. Who knows? If Lane Kiffin believes there's going to be somebody out there better for him, then he could wait. But obviously, Ole Miss, Spencer Rattler, would make a ton of sense because there is playing time there. After the first 2, I will also readily admit, it gets much fuzzier from there. I think the third team that makes a whole lot of sense is Arizona. Again, Spencer Rattler is from Arizona, but I also think it's going to be kind of a tough sell for Spencer Rattler. Remember, this is a guy that just finished his 3rd year. He thought he'd be done with college football already, off to the NFL where he was going to be a first-round draft pick. Instead, he's in the transfer portal. And so the question with Arizona, which is coming off, and I thought they played about as well as you could expect under Jedd Fisch, but they still weren't very good in that first season at Arizona under Jedd Fisch. They finished 1-11 overall, 1-8 in the Pac-12. The bottom line is there going to be just enough talent around him to go ahead and want to go to Arizona and basically put his career on the line playing behind a bad offensive line with not very much skill position? Now, could Jedd Fisch upgrade pretty quickly in the portal? He could. Do I think he will? I don't know. And so I just bring all that up to just very simply say that when I look at this situation, I don't know that Arizona makes a ton of sense. It obviously makes sense because he is from Arizona. I just don't know that it makes a ton of sense because I just don't know if there will be enough talent around him going forward. A couple other schools that go to mind, TCU. Obviously, if you want to stay at the Power 5 level, Sonny Dykes, new head coach at TCU. He was at SMU, has had some of the best pass attacks in college football over the last couple years at SMU. He is now, again, at TCU. This year, SMU ranked in the top 20 nationally in passing. And while TCU does have a returning starter at quarterback, new head coach, you'll have the opportunity to have success at TCU if you want it, if you get the opportunity to go in and compete for that starting spot. The big thing, though, of course, at TCU is, like I just said, as of right now, their starting quarterback this past season, his name was Max Duggan. He is still planning on coming back next year, or he was only a junior this year, so he should be back. And so, again, do you want to go to a place where there is obvious competition at quarterback? I don't know. A couple other schools, Texas A&M. I don't know if Texas A&M is interested. Remember, their starting quarterback this year, Haynes King, got hurt. But, again, if they're looking for a quarterback, if they don't believe that Haynes King is the answer, then they could go to the portal. They also have a really good freshman coming in next year. But, again, just a one-year stopgap if you don't think Haynes King is the guy. I tend to think that Jimbo likes Haynes King, and so because of it, I don't think Spencer Rattler is realistic there. I don't think that A&M will be hitting the portal for a quarterback. You know, UCLA with Dorian Thompson-Robinson probably gone after this year. Couple things with that. You know, I've seen a little UCLA buzz. And again, it makes sense. West Coast, they're going to need a starting quarterback. At the same time, there's a few things that jump to mind with UCLA. The first one, their backup actually played pretty well in limited minutes this year. Ethan Garbers, I thought he played pretty well in his time on the field. The other thing is I mentioned that Spencer Rattler, fair or not, has a little bit of a reputation. Chip Kelly has obviously become synonymous. You know, he's talked a lot about character and how important it is. So if he believes that Spencer Rattler is going to be a cause, a distraction, whatever, then I don't know that one makes sense. And then finally, the last one that I would say is, well, I'll tell you this. I'll give you one that I don't believe is going to happen. I've seen it mentioned, and I don't buy it, is Oregon. I was told by somebody that I trust Oregon would not be interested in Spencer Rattler. They, of course, are going to lose a senior quarterback. They are going to be really good and really built to again, have success pretty much everywhere. They're going to be built to have pretty much success anywhere going forward. But they're built. They have the pieces everywhere else other than quarterback is what I'm trying to say. So Spencer Rattler is in the portal. If I had to guess right now, I think the top two are very clear. It's either Arizona State or Ole Miss. I would expect this thing to move quickly, but those are the schools that I like for Spencer Rattler. All right, so what I want to do, I want to take a quick break. As promised, I want to come back, and I do want to talk a little hoops, talk a little Duke, talk a little Gonzaga, talk a little UCLA, what else I saw during Feast Week in college hoops. I'll be right back. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube channel. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram.